I'm Don Frazier. This is Paul Fabrizio, and we are going through the Constitution line by line. We're still in the 25th Amendment, which has been somewhat murky and interesting in a sinister sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the 25th Amendment in an innocent way.
Yes.
But
the people that you study are rarely innocent.
You mean politicians?
Yeah, I'm a political scientist. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, the desire for power can lead to all sorts of things.
Yes.
And we're talking about people at the upper echelon of our government.
Yes.
So what we're going to do now is read the second half of Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. We want to point out, going back to our earlier discussion on the first section of Section 4, that the Vice President sends a letter to Congress, and he does it with the cabinet saying, hey, the president's no longer able to fulfill the job.
So we got it.
We got it. And that all he has to do is send the letter. Congress doesn't respond.
Congress just says, hey, got it.
Got it.
Check.
Boom.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in the words, it says the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties.
So this is a coup within the executive branch only.
A constitutional coup.
Yeah, a constitutional coup.
Okay? So let's go on to the next part. Thereafter, when the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereafter, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose if not in session, if the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session, within 21 days after the Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office. Now, that is a long and complicated thing.
But it's a pretty simple principle.
It's a pretty simple principle.
That is, what if the president comes back and says, I'm not dead yet?
I'm fine.
And the vice president says, well, I and the rest of the cabinet believe that he is incapacitated. So now all of a sudden Congress is the referee.
Yes.
And if they're in session, they've got 4 days to sort it. If they're not, they've got 20 days.
Yeah.
Man, that is a constitutional crisis over the Christmas break.
You better believe it.
I mean, sensational, novel proportions.
You got it. I keep thinking of, and I hate to say it, but Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah. And the guy who kept on saying, it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, flesh wound. No, did you? I'll bite you. Yeah.
I keep on thinking that. So you have the vice president sending to Congress a notice that, hey, guess what? The president ain't well.
Yeah.
And he immediately gets the powers of the president. The president then says, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
I'm just in Hawaii.
That's right. And he sends a letter saying, I'm fine. Who has the president?
Yeah, who's the real president?
Yeah, it's easy for the vice president to take over as acting president, and then you have a constitutional crisis.
And who has the nuclear code during all this?
And who has the nuclear code is a real good question.
Wow.
Okay.
This is chilling.
This we call a ticking time bomb in the Constitution.
Political scientists?
We political scientists. It's a really troubling thing. I remember...
Because this smacks of Roman intrigue.
It sure does. I remember 25 years ago reading about this, and there was a group of political scientists who said, we need to fix the 25th Amendment. We did not think it through, meaning we, the United States government and their advisors, did not think it through when we wrote the Constitution, when we wrote this
The
amendment.
amendment, and it was proposed in 65, passed
It
in
was-
67.
Yes, yes. And so they, again, were responding, I would argue, in an innocent way to the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Absolutely.
And the tragic thinking really didn't take place until afterwards, when people looked at the words and they go, wait a second. And the words here create the potential where we could have a president and a vice president vying for presidential power.
At war with each other.
Right. Now, some of the things that people have proposed is, well, that we have an outside body that would examine the president to determine if the president's okay. So,
What body is that, please?
you see, that's the whole point. Which body would that be? Would you have a group of psychiatrists do it? Well, which ones? Do you have medical doctors?
Yeah, which one?
And it depends, again, on what disability the president has according to the vice president. And what if the vice president says the president has this disability and the president himself says, I don't have that disability, I'm fine? What if it's something like dementia? How do you go about proving that? What about Alzheimer's?
Schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia. How do you go about that? It's really, really troubling. And I don't know how to fix the problem. And yet at the same time, if you think tragically, you could see that we would eventually have a president where this could be a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, president has a stroke. President doesn't realize, doesn't accept they had the stroke.
President gets pressed into carbonite and hauled off for auction.
There you go.
I'm just
Little
thinking,
Star Wars.
well, I'm going way forward into the future.
Yeah, you are. Okay,
That's
so
President Han Solo.
Yeah.
One of our best.
one of our best ever presidents. So anyway, this is in our Constitution. I don't know how to fix
Tick,
it.
tick, tick.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, this has all the makings of a Roman coup.
Or a great novel.
Yeah, or a great novel. I'm surprised nobody's written this yet.
Somebody may have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So anyway, I've only read it in the context of, constitutional law lawyers, political scientists really trying to come to grips with this. And you really struggle over how to fix it. What do you do about it?
Yeah, I understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And if you believe conspiracy theorists,
Yes.
that Johnson had Kennedy killed
Right.
in order to take over the government,
Which there's no proof.
there's absolutely zero proof unless you believe some of the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
But-
so, in other words, there's no
Yeah,
proof.
yeah, and do with that what you want. I've got no feelings on that one way or the other. But this is the part of the amendment that says, Johnson, you didn't have to kill him.
Yeah.
You just had to convince his cabinet.
But again, this came when Johnson was president. So,
Yeah, correct.
But you think about the future, and the possibility is there. And this is one of those things that opponents of President Trump have talked about.
Yeah,
And
trying to get Pence to be the Praetorian Guard.
And my struggle with it is that they say, Mike Pence, get together with members of the cabinet, write that letter to Congress, you become the acting president. Well, they didn't deal with the last half of this Section 4, which is President Trump then writing a letter saying, I'm fine.
And what if somebody spoofed it? And spoofed both of them? Because right now, I could send an email with your name on it.
Yes, you could.
Not much trouble. As a buddy of mine that's in the cybersecurity business said, sending an email is like writing on a postcard in pencil.
Right.
All right. So let's say somebody could essentially do a hack. See, I'm getting this novel set in my head.
You are.
What if somebody could do a hack and then claim that happened, and then claim the president said, no, I'm just fine, and then Congress takes over, and the executive branch is looking at each other saying, well, I never sent that letter. I never sent that letter either. And now Congress is already saying, yeah, y'all are both suspect.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Watch for the novel,
Yeah.
The 25th Amendment,
The 25th
President,
Amendment.
by Don Fraser. But the short answer to that is there's a tradition that there be a written document
Sure.
that would go.
Absolutely.
And
under signature.
with signatures
That
and
could
everything
absolutely
like that.
not be hacked. No one could ever forge a written document that looked legit.
Well, okay, there's White
I
House
saw Nicolas
photographers.
Cage. I saw Nicolas
yeah,
Cage steal
okay,
the
okay.
Constitution. I know it could happen. I saw it on the internet. It makes it true.
There are written documents. There are White House photographers, White House videographers who would film the whole thing if it were to happen. I assure you, this is something, if we ever get to this point, that everybody would want to have very well documented just to prevent what you're
But
proposing.
you got 4 days.
Yeah, I know, and all sorts of things can happen. But this is a troubling part of the Constitution. To me, this is one of the most troubling parts of the Constitution, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know, what do you do when you have a president who's not well, and yet he thinks he's well, or she thinks she's well? What do you do? And I don't know. Okay, Don.
Is that the end of the 25th Amendment?
That's the end of the 25th Amendment.
Woo!
Okay?
Can we go back and take a look at some easier amendments?
Yeah, we'll go to the 26th.
Oh, great. We'll go to the 26th next time.